Miss Emily Dickert. She's going to talk about CrisisLink, and I haven't got an insight of what it is, so I'm looking forward to it as much as all of us are.
Okay, my name is Emily Dickert. I'm the Director of Administration and Outreach at CrisisLink, and CrisisLink is an organization that works to raise awareness around suicide and suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. So we do, the primary function of CrisisLink is a hotline that we can call if you're ever in crisis, any kind of crisis, but our kind of special focus is suicide prevention. So I want to show you guys a quick video that I think is going to play, just that talks a little bit about our services, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more.
Since its inception, CrisisLink has encouraged people to break their silence and talk about their emotional trauma. Founded as a hotline for Arlington teens 40 years ago today, CrisisLink fields a wide range of calls from the metropolitan Washington region. Since 1969, we've answered more than 500,000 crisis calls, responded to over 25,000 potential suicides, and provided more than 250,000 referrals to community resources. CrisisLink is a first responder in our community and is a critical part of the region's safety net.
It's still valid, hasn't gone away, and there's still a need. Take a look at the kinds of people we can reach out to. For example, we've seen a change where we're getting more veterans now.
The statistics bear out the notion that kids are more stressed these days, are more suicidal, are more depressed.
Look at all the people who are being foreclosed on, look at all the people who are laid off, look at all the people whose businesses have disappeared. These are the folks who are out there in need. They're the ones that are calling us.
CrisisLink helps them through the difficult times when people don't have the support that that other people have, and the blessings that other people have.
This is a rare volunteer job where you get to personally reach out and touch somebody and make a difference in their life.
I want to be involved in something since I can't
in a little bit about volunteerism as it pertains to CrisisLink, and that is actually our largest, the donation of volunteer hours is our largest donation in the organization. All of the phones are answered by volunteers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are an ongoing crisis center, and without the volunteers we couldn't provide that service. So it's something that we're always looking for volunteers on, and I'd like to thank Ashley for having me come today. He mentioned that you guys might be interested in learning a little bit about our volunteer programs. We have two kinds of volunteers. We have hotline volunteers who actually answer the crisis calls, and in order to do that, you go through about a 60-hour training program, which is accredited through the American Association of Suicidology. Additionally, you then commit to 1 year on the hotlines. Anything beyond that is at your discretion, so that you go through training, you get the experience of really handling those calls with 1 shift per week, and usually they're 3 hours long. So it's a really great way to be involved and to have kind of an ongoing volunteer opportunity. So if you know people who are interested in that kind of volunteerism, I have the business cards for our volunteer manager here today. Additionally, we have non-hotline volunteers who do things like special events, administration, research and writing for the organization. So there's a whole lot of volunteerism that goes into CrisisLink. CrisisLink services, like I said before, are broken up into 3 parts. It's the prevention, which is awareness, raising awareness around suicide, letting people know that it's an issue, and especially among youth, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death in teenagers. So we have a huge campaign, our Friend campaign, to get the word out and to help youth identify signs of suicidal behaviors in their friends and encourage them to call. Sometimes people don't want to make a call for themselves, but they'll call for a friend. So, and then we can actually do follow-up calls and things like that. Our center was chosen by the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is the 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-SUICIDE that you see advertised, on TV and on major bridges. Need to talk, and it says call someone. That's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. We are one of their centers, and they actually chose us because we are the 3rd largest center in the country to pilot a text follow-up program with teenagers. So if someone calls and says, that they're suicidal, and we're able to de-escalate the situation or provide an intervention, and we need to follow up with them the next day, or they ask us to make sure they're still doing okay, we can now provide that follow-up at their choice as a text message or a phone call. So that's a great way to reach you because text messaging is apparently the way that most teenagers communicate exclusively. So we're really excited about that program. So the prevention aspect is a huge part, and that's where we want all of our energies to be, because we don't want there to have to be interventions if we do enough prevention. But unfortunately, there will always be those cases. We field 55,000 calls a year, so approximately 1,100 calls a week. We're actually fielding from people in crisis. About 30% of them are suicide calls, and of those, about 5% are active interventions, where we have to send help to that person who is in progress in a suicide attempt. So kind of staggering numbers, but it's a service that we can provide to hopefully reduce the number of deaths by suicide. So that's the intervention stage of things. The postvention is the Tierra Sermon Hope Program, which is 2 parts. One is a loss team, where it's a mobile response team of listeners who are also specialized and trained to go out in the aftermath of a suicide to counsel the family and friends. Because people who have experienced suicide and are victims of suicide loss are in a much higher risk category for suicide themselves. So the loss team will actually go out in the immediate aftermath and provide counseling. The other part of the postvention Hope program is a adult survivor of suicide support group, which meets bi-weekly, and CrisisLink underwrites all of the costs for that, so all of the members can attend for free. And it's just a group counseling session, and they provide support to each other. And there's a licensed facilitator that oversees those support group sessions. So 2 really great postvention services that we provide. One of the other things the video talked about is our role in emergency mission in its totality, including the on-the-job trainings, is about 60 hours. A chunk of that, about 12 hours of that, is on-the-job training, where they will actually take live calls with one of our experienced listeners and debrief each call. So in a shift, normally you could take 10 or more calls during your OJTs, your on-the-job trainings. You'll take about half that number because you spend as long as the call lasts, usually debriefing it and talking about what things you could have done differently and what you did well, so that the hotline listeners feel really prepared. It is stressful and it's high stakes, and so we want to make sure that we have the best training available for our listeners. Lifeline mandated several years ago a portion of that training, which is the ASSIST training, and it's an active suicide intervention training. And so that was added to our current hotline training, which lengthened it a little bit, but our feedback has been from our volunteers that it's been quite helpful. So it seems like a lot of hours. I went through the training myself when I started at CrisisLink, and the feedback that I got from my fellow classmates was that it was, without the training, they wouldn't have felt prepared to take the call. So I think that even though it does seem like kind of a heavy number,
I would think
it's
it would
beneficial.
take that much, because the same kind of experience in schools, when there's a suicide, there's a call, there are a number of people that are trained in the school system
Yeah.
that arrive, and they come from all corners, and obviously they need to be trained, because you don't just come to one place, deal with an event without having some bottom line that you operate on.
So what I brought, oh yes,
I'm just saying, with most other emotional problems, nighttime is the heaviest.
absolutely, and our
Is that
heaviest call
yours
volume
too?
is from 10 to 2, 10
Yeah.
p.m. to 2 a.m.
And then, is that the same for kids
Yeah.
as well?
Absolutely. It is, it's about the same. Our demographic, we're doing more and more demographic research as it's becoming allowed and also required by our grantors. And we're finding that actually the heaviest call volume is between 10 and 2, and the heaviest demographic in that is youth. So,
Do you find over the years that the dynamics have changed with the type of people that are calling, or that, from my view, actually the email and Twitter is an easy way to send something without any emotion or eyes or inflection. And so are you seeing more cases because of that? We've read about the suicides of young people who were inundated with really bad Twitter, bad email.
well, it is an issue, and we're actually, CrisisLink is spearheading a task force in the metro area on cyberbullying right now, to see, one, how we can break that down, and two, how we can make sure that people in those cases know that there is support out there. So, yes, it's a problem. I don't know how much it's affected call volume. I think the larger impact on call volume was the economic crisis, which really did spike. This movie was made about a year and a half ago, and it said in the last 5 years that our suicide-related calls have gone up 150%. It's gone up another almost 150% in this year and a half. So,
Wow.
I was going to say, what are some of the advertising methods that you guys use to prevention and get the word out there?
okay, as a partnership in the National Prevention Lifeline, they actually do quite a bit of advertising. We also do a vast array of outreach. We do have a Facebook account, Twitter, LinkedIn, because that's how you reach teens. We also do wildcard distributions, and we make it an effort to distribute each semester 50,000 wallet cards in schools. We also do the same thing, huge outreach days, impact days, at the metro stations. We'll choose a region where we'll hit every metro station in that area one morning and have 100 volunteers handing out wallet cards. The wallet cards, I brought some with me. They have on the front our number and then the 1-800-SUICIDE number, so you can reach us directly or through the Lifeline. And then on the back it has some tips. If you think someone is suicidal, what can you do? Learn about what signs there are, talk to them, listen, and then your actions. So it has kind of steps to be involved. And I have them here, and you're welcome to take as many as you like. And that's one of our big outreach campaigns. And when we started doing this, our call volume really spiked initially, so it showed us